Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Adult Game Reviews. This week I'm reviewing Origin Story by Jdor. It currently has 8 chapters released, and I got it over on Jdor's Patreon. Origin Story won the monthly game review poll. It's been on my list for a long time, however my track record with superhero games hasn't been great. Did I finally get a good one, or does it go in the pile of the other mid to bad superpower games? Let's find out. I'm including a short, more in-depth section in the Patreon Subscribe Star version to discuss more of the relationship interactions. No matter what I've tried lately, YouTube dings me for it. Hopefully, we can ride out all this censorship. So let's get into who you are. You play a normie, just a regular 22-year-old guy with no powers in a world where everyone seems to have some. That is, until you keep the promise you made to your best friend Evelyn. You end up gaining the ability to absorb powers from people if you get close enough to them. After being attacked by a Tiger Man for yet unknown reasons,
you're just jealous. Tiger Man is a great catch.
The Superhero League, or the Sisters as known in Origin Story, take an interest in you. Many want to unalive you, but they also see how useful you could be to them. The whole 8 chapters basically happens over the span of a week. So much happens over that week, and you change quite a bit over that time. Okay, so visually, Origin Story ranges from kinda average DAS visuals to above average. There's some games that come out that the visuals are so good that the story can just suck and people will still be drawn to it. You know who you are. Origin Story's visuals are good, but they aren't quite to the level of some of the best out there, but still very, very solid. There are some very sporadic minor animations, but I don't remember seeing animations in most scenes, just as an FYI. Moving on to audio, there is consistent music that does a good job setting the tone. You aren't going to listen to any of it outside of Origin Story, but it does its job. There are also sound effects. Many scenes where you're just talking to another character, there are very few sound effects outside of ambient noises, but when you do think there should be a sound effect, there usually is. So all in all, the audio was solid. Okay, let's get into the story. The writing was great, easily one of the strengths of Origin Story. There were times where I burst out laughing at just some of the side scenes that could be easily missed. For instance, the Centaur being one of my favorites. This all kind of plays into how I think the story and the atmosphere were really well done. You really get a feeling for the MC's plight. You're at the lowest rung socially. The mean girls treat you like crap and no one thinks you're worthwhile because you haven't manifested yet. That is until you keep your promise to Evelyn and all of a sudden, you gain powers.
But I'm kind of a big deal.
There is some good and bad with the story and plot. A good thing is that there is a relatively large variation between all the characters. My favorite being Ruth, because you see the largest character arc with her, while others like Moonsong are basically the same from beginning to end. The second is the whole setup with your power and how you gain more powers is kind of perfect. It allows for a lot of creativity with all the powers you see. My favorite being the guy who doesn't sweat. If you know, you know. Or the person that knows your greatest fears just by looking at you. However, this all leads to my first negative, and I've been struggling to find a way to say this. Let me preface this by saying the writing is a huge strength. However, the setup on how you gain powers kind of leads to very lengthy interactions with the girls. It can feel like they drag, and almost half of the entire game is made up of these interactions.
The Wrap It Up box in stores now.
I discuss more about this in my Patreon section. This brings me to the choices. It felt as time went on there were less and less actual choices. You can decide who you want to pursue, but I didn't really see a reason to not say yes to everyone, except for one very specific decision at the beginning. So there were many times the story almost felt like a kinetic novel. Technically, I would not call it that. There are choices, but it's really close to the line where some people may consider this kinetic. I don't really have a problem with this personally, especially since the writing is well done, but I do think people will be upset if they expect more control over the story. So what did I think? This is easily the best superhero or superpower game I've played outside of Superhuman. The writing is great, the whole setup and world is fantastic. You can tell the world building was well thought out. There are moments of humor and I'm very curious to see where the story is going. So this is a play for me. Even with many of the issues I had with Origin Story, I'm very curious to hear what happens next. I want to thank all my backers on Patreon and Subscribe Star, and if you haven't seen my video on growing things up, you can check it out right here. Thanks again. Until next time.